In today's project, we're going to be making a dice box / tray where you can keep all your dice contained and roll them. You can get the pattern and artwork for this project either in the description of my videos or up in the link here, so check those out. And hey, make sure you check below this video for shirts I've designed. Pick one up, it helps support the channel. As usual, this video is sponsored by LONSDALE Leather here in Vancouver, Canada. They've got a wide range of supplies and leather, so check the description of this video and have a look. Since this is a box, it's obviously a modified rectangle pattern. It's a fairly simple pattern and great for beginners. It involves some hand stitching, some cutting, beveling. Here I'm using a 6-ounce leather. You could use an 8-ounce or heavier. I wouldn't go too heavy, and I wouldn't go anywhere below 6 ounce. Here I'm marking the lines on my pieces for my V-gouge. The V-gouge will cut out a strip of leather and enable you to bend your sides easier. I also use a V-gouge in my bookmaking video, so have a look at that too. I'm using a really small beveler here. I don't want to get anything too beveled, but I do want to take away some of the edge. Where there's going to be stitching, like right here, I'm using a wider beveler so that when I bring the edges together, they're more flush. I still have zero regrets about buying this iPad Pro. It's been absolutely amazing. This video obviously needs some artwork, so let's draw a raven. I recently became an Epidemic Sound ambassador, so this music, as well as any other you hear on my channel, are from Epidemic Sound. If you're a creator and are looking for music, be sure to check the description of this video for a link to their website. I've got lots of videos on leather carving. We're not going to go too into detail here, but make sure you wet your leather, let it dry a bit, use some tracing film and put your first trace of your image onto your piece, and then you just got to carve it with a swivel knife. I keep my blade polished. Doesn't matter if it's ceramic, it helps it glide more smoothly. It's a lot of patience, a lot of tedious work, but I really enjoy it. Funny story about me, random for you guys to hear. I had shoulder surgery a few years ago, and so whenever I'm pulling with this swivel knife, my shoulder is clicking and popping, which is really awesome. So imagine drawing with your shoulder clicking and popping all the time. I'm not going to go too crazy with this raven. I want to get all my cuts in, and then I want to bevel the outside edge to make it pop a bit more. I still haven't decided what color it's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be black at this point. But I was deciding if maybe I wanted to do just an antique brown so it popped a little better. Now I'm just giving it a little more water so that I can let it dry a little bit once again and bevel it. More tedious beveling. You guys have seen me use a stylus to bevel before, but usually those are on long straight lines, so here I'm beveling properly. Get all the edge done, and then I've decided that I want to add a little more detail to the very outside edge of this piece. Now it wasn't on the pattern here, so I kind of wing it, but it'll be on the pattern on my website and on my Patreon. So after this is all done, it's going to be time for me to dye this piece. And because I was trying to decide if I wanted to leave the raven and antique it, or if I'm going to dye it black, I've hand painted a lot of the brown that goes onto this. If I could have a do-over, I would have avoided these spots that I'm carving right now, just stayed away from them, and dyed the whole top brown. except for these little edges. Then I would have painted around the edge with some dye. That way the coat would have been a lot more even, and when I got back to it, I could just either paint or paint with dyes the Raven black. Whenever you're painting with dyes in a large area, it's kind of hit and miss for making sure that you have a nice even color. And I'm rushing a bit, so I want to get a video out to you guys. I'm using a 3mm hole punch here. I would have punched these holes after I dyed it, because what happens is when I dye the back, there's some bleed onto the front, so make sure you punch your holes last. Here I'm wetting the leather so it can, in theory, have a more even coat. It works really well, especially when I just put it on with a large sponge like this really quick. I'm using a Phoebing's Pro Dye Mahogany here, if you're curious. I find that Pro Dye goes on a lot evener usually, and dries generally a little lighter. Now the tedious part of painting with dyes. So it takes quite a while for me to get this done, but like I was saying earlier, I might have just masked off those edges or avoided them and just dyed the whole top, at least like the top square with the Raven, all brown, got it nice and even. Because those edges can be a little easier to hide that they're not even, if you know what I mean. If you've got these large areas, they start to look mottled if you're not careful. If I make a mistake and I know what I could have done better, I like to make sure I inform you guys of it. You learn more through failure than success, I find. So jumping ahead a little bit here, because I'm never sure on my timing. Once we've got all the dye done and it's dried, we're going to spray or wipe on a finish or resist. I'm going to use a Angelus matte finish for this. I'm going to use a spray gun. Most people don't have a spray gun, but if it is in your power to get a spray gun, I highly recommend it. Small air compressor, airbrush, or larger air compressor and a spray gun works really amazingly for putting on your finish or resists. So if you're a leather carver and you want it nice and even, that's the way to go. Buffing it up will make it look a lot more even, but you can still tell that it's got a little bit of modeling to it, and putting your resist or finish on will also make it even out a little better. I'm going to use the beeswax and just do some burnishing to the outside edge. Obviously, I'm not going to burnish the inside seams where it's stitched, just around the outside of each piece. Now we just buff off any excess wax along the edge, and now it's time for that matte finish I was talking about, and my spray gun. So the bottom piece and the inside box both get one coat. The top piece gets 2 coats. Once the top piece is dry and ready for the stain, we're putting on way too much, way too much antique stain, and we're trying not to get it on the bottom, which never works. Your finish or resist makes sure that that stain doesn't really affect the color too much, but it gets in all the cracks and makes it pop. See, it's a mess in the back. So I'm just gonna wipe the stain all over the back. I doubt anybody else does this, but it works for me sometimes. It's not a piece that's going to be getting wet. I'm going to throw the stain on it, hit a finish on the top, hit a finish on the back. Honestly, the inside it looks a lot better dark brown and smoother like that anyways, so I don't know if I would recommend it, but it works. Now it's time to hand stitch. Don't overthink it. These are X's with knots at the back. I decided to make them all the same, so I start at the same point at each series of holes. I do in the same direction, and it works out really easily. Now see how that inside of this box is now a lighter color? Well, I'm obviously going to go back to that later and put some stain in those as well, and it'll even it out nicely. It's actually kind of a pain in the butt to film stitching, but this actually worked out pretty decently. Even though, as I said, don't worry about it too much. Just, you know, put your thread and your needle through the hole and tie a knot. And here I am quickly just putting way too much gel into these box parts. But they look nice. Finish works. Sealed well. Smooth surface to roll on. Looks better than just plain fluffy leather. Well, there you have it, everybody. Another video in the box. Make sure you pick up the pattern and artwork off my website or off my Patreon for a limited time. Subscribe for future videos. Hit the notification button so you don't miss any of my content. And until next time, keep on being creative in whatever it is you do.